The 5 C's of Cinematography is an incredibly influential book in filmmaking. Written by Joseph Michelli, this book covers some of the key fundamentals needed to create movies, and its teachings can be applied not just to live action, but to anime. It breaks up the essentials into 5 sections, and while any viewer could probably understand the importance of things like camera angles or close-ups, you probably don't think about cutting as much. And that's a good thing. A cut is when you switch from one shot to another. Think of a cast having a meal. When you jump to a close-up of someone's face, that was a cut. It'd be very dull to stare at a continuous scene for several minutes, so it's important to vary your shot selection to maintain intrigue. And it's also important to preserve consistency in your shots. You wouldn't want a character who was at point A in shot 1 to suddenly be at point B in shot 2. It pulls you out of your immersion, and that's why cutting is so invisible to viewers. If the show cuts well, you won't notice anything amiss. However, cutting can also work to positively impact the audience's viewing experience. And Frieren, Beyond Journey's End, is a perfect example of cutting that is just too good not to notice. If you've been living under a rock, Frieren is a fantasy story about an elf who retraces the journey she took to defeat the Demon King over half a century ago. Along the way, she reflects on the relationships she took for granted and finds greater appreciation for the people she knew and continues to meet. Part of the structure of the show is that as Frieren goes on this adventure with a new party, she has flashbacks to the first journey she took with Himmel, a deceased party member who was in love with her. And it's these transitions from the present to the past that showcase to me the power of cutting. At its core, an episode of anime is made of several individual segments with different camera angles, compositions, and more. Cutting has the important job of establishing continuity between these segments. In particular, it's easy to get lost when the show flips between the past and present. To ease this transition, Frieren utilizes something called a match cut. It's a bit of a broad term, but match cuts refer to a transition between two shots that share some audio-visual element. Whether it is a graphic match where things like shapes or characters are similar, or an action match where the movement in both scenes are synchronized, match cuts create connections between these distinct scenes. Frieren loves to use graphic matches to switch between present and past. Having an object to anchor you as you shift casts and locations goes a long way in maintaining immersion. Often it is Frieren herself who is used to link these time periods. It holds narrative relevance because Frieren is unchanging relative to her more mortal companions. By using Frieren to match the two time periods, the show further emphasizes her growth in those moments. But even something as banal as a hamburger steak can be used to flip from present to the past. Using a graphic match between two separate characters, so a match in position and form, can highlight the similarities or differences between them. In the same episode, a flashback of Frieren recalling Aizen cooking a hamburger steak is graphically matched by the following shot placing his student, Stark, in the same position. Here, the broader technique is closer to something called keeping the focal point, where the position of focus in one shot coincides with the first focal point in the next shot. It points out the similarity between master and student while cleverly imparting Aizen's wisdom to Stark. Now, that's not to say other forms of cutting don't attempt to preserve continuity. The purpose of any cut is to create a coherent story from a collection of shots. But the striking obviousness of the matching visuals draws attention to the cut and invites the viewer to draw conclusions about the connection between discrete parts. While match cuts may be the most eye-catching type of scene transition, Frieren employs a wide gamut of cuts to again enhance the viewer experience and the story. Another way to maintain continuity of the past during Frieren's reminiscing is to bookend the flashback between similar shots. This involves sandwiching a flashback in between two identical or graphically matched shots. This extra care goes a long way in smoothing out the interjection of this non-contemporary scene from the current plot, as it clearly indicates when the flashback is over and cleverly signals to the audience that the present has not moved forward. It's the equivalent of pausing the main storyline to expand upon this tangent and then resuming once you're done. This type of cutting operates similarly to a cutaway, which adds additional context by cutting to another scene or action before returning to the original shot. While this book ending is effective on its own, Frieren even adds some extra spice to these interjections by utilizing screen direction. Screen direction is an essential part of cutting. This term refers to how characters' movements much match directionally from cut to cut. If a character walks off screen to the left, they must appear from the right in the next shot. Otherwise, you risk confusing the viewer and ruining immersion. At the same time, the screen direction is an economical means of grounding the next shot. If a character shifts their face to a direction, whatever is in the next shot is assumed to be in the direction of where the character is looking. In Frieren, this is of course a must-follow principle, but I think the director also has a clever application of screen direction in relation to flashbacks. Some episodes initiate flashbacks by having Frieren turn her head towards an empty space. The scene then cuts to the memory, which is bookended by Frieren in that same position, rotating back to whoever she was talking to. I love this cut of Frieren remembering the identity of the old man because it makes use of our natural tendency to assume cause and effect to lead the viewer into a relevant flashback. It guides the viewer away from the other characters in the present to the cast in the past, and it physically places the flashback away from the main story. Plus, she's even facing the same direction in the flashback as she does in the present for continuity. It's a small touch, but it helps delineate the difference between the past and present in a subtle and consistent manner. These recent cutting examples have focused on how cutting precisely discerns between past and present, but cutting can also be used to elevate the delivery of a flashback. In addition to the graphics and screen direction, you can also offset the audio as you go in and out of flashbacks. Sometimes you will observe that though we cut to a different scene, the audio from the previous shot still persists. In this scene, Flamme's dialogue continues to be heard even though we've cut from the shot of Flamme's house to the larger tree in the present. This is known as an L cut, named after what that type of edit looks like in the software timeline. The reverse also exists, called the J cut, wherein the audio precedes the change in image. Both shots have their uses that add additional depth to the scene. L cuts, for instance, give a sense of lingering. In the earlier example of Flamme and Frieren, it underscores Flamme's wisdom in predicting that Frieren would return to that particular location. The L cut sees frequent use in this show specifically to emphasize Frieren's reminiscing and demonstrate how the words of Himmel and others have resonated with her decades after they were spoken. A good L cut enables those messages to traverse eras and naturally supports Frieren's themes of introspection and the passage of time. A J cut, on the other hand, can create a sense of urgency or anticipation. As Aura falls under the effects of Frieren's ploy, we hear Flamme before we see her. The scene then cuts to the two of them shadowed by outfits drying on a clothesline, nefariously plotting hundreds of years in advance the strategy that would bring about Aura's doom. Throughout the episode, we've seen the origin story of their relationship and how the seeds for the entire climax of this fight were planted. The J cut is a simple yet powerful choice that drums up a little hype for the grand reveal and, like the L cut, traverses time to bring Flamme into this moment of triumph. It's truly remarkable how just changing where you split your audio file can heighten the story's emotional beats. This is just a small taste of the various types of cuts Frieren utilizes to incorporate flashbacks into the story. Sometimes a cut is just a cut. Other times, Frieren will fade to white or use a cross dissolve to dip in and out of the past, both of which are more standard cuts to use for flashbacks. It's admittedly a little inconsistent, but that can potentially be explained by the dozen or so episode directors and storyboarders. It's not a weakness to avoid committing to a singular style of cutting. Cutting is simply another tool in each director's kit to deliver the story in their own style. To return to the 5 C's of cinematography, Michele describes how the editor is able to achieve a cumulative effect in assembling the individual shots. Whether it's the match cut, the J cut, or just facing your characters in the right way, it's evident how these almost imperceptible adjustments can bring out the best in a pair or trio of scenes. In the same way you enjoy the quieter, nostalgia-driven episodes of Frieren, I hope you can come to celebrate all the invisible choices directors and storyboarders make when they decide where a shot begins and ends.